It's Warhol, actually.
What did I say?
Hole. It's Hole. As in holes. What? Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol. Like Hole.
Andy Warhol, take one.
Ah.
Candy said, I've come to hate my body and all that it requires in this world.
I saw this man with funny white hair and unusual looking, and he was kissing some man on the cheek. I had never seen two men kiss before, and I was looking at him, looking at this happening, and all of a sudden I feel a pair of hands on my head, and my head was like this, and it was Joan Crawford, and she looked at me very seriously and she said, "Real men don't kiss like this in America. They do it in Europe, but never in New York." Andy was just somebody who I was very fond of and very receptive to young people. He had infinite patience and very smart. And in the 1960s and 70s, there were many scenes going on in New York. I mean, there were scenes, but his scene was the most exciting of them all. He had famous people around him all the time. And if you were a kid growing up in Long Island like I was, you could go and hang out there and meet people like Jim Morrison and Judy Garland and Janis Joplin, people like that. It was very exciting. I liked him because he was different. I mean, I read about him. I thought he was very interesting. I liked what he was doing. I loved his paintings. I thought he was a great artist. And the gayness part of it never came into it, although he had the most astounding looking men around him at all times, great beauties, and beautiful women too. He had a lot of beauty. I mean, they liked you up there if you were rich, if you were young, but most important, if you were good looking. And if you were good looking and young, that was 2 out of 3, and they let you up there. I love his laughing cows. I always find it very amusing, laughing cow. I don't know why. And then I like his Marilyns and the S&H green stamps. I love all his things, the multiples. I think they're really interesting. But his last paintings were, to me, more interesting than anything he did because he collaborated with Basquiat and Keith Haring. And he was smart enough to do that. And he had young people around him at all times. And they had young ideas and young energy. And he realized the way of keeping young is to have young people around him, and I believe that. He was shot in 1968 by a friend of mine, Valerie Solanas, and I felt very guilty. I thought, well, you know, now that he's shot, nobody will ever talk to me. I didn't know Andy then at all, but I started supposing in my head that, oh, now I'll never meet him, he'll die, and, you know, why did Valerie do this?
Ready?
Yeah.
In 1965, you know, I was this gay kid living in Queens and didn't know what I wanted, and, you know, I wanted to fall in love, and I felt, you know, who's gonna love me? I mean, I'm so different than anybody else. I took the subway to Times Square, and there was this obviously homosexual kid, teenager, a little older than me. And I said, gee, he knows where he's going, and this guy knows where he's going. So I followed him down to the West Village, and a street called Greenwich Avenue, which at the time was a gay mecca, the epicenter of the gay world in New York City. And I said, oh, all these men, they're holding hands. This is amazing. I just sat down and made believe I was writing a letter. And these 3 women passed me and dropped their keys near me. I said, ladies, you dropped your keys. They came back and they picked their keys up and threw it in my lap. And one said, well, this is an invitation for you to join the ladies. I thought, oh wow, what's going on? And they grabbed me. I was just a pretty skinny kid. And they picked me up, and all of a sudden we were walking into this hotel on 8th Street. There was this woman, her name was Molly Marlton, and she had no legs. And she said, just a minute, you girls can't bring this boy up here. I'm going to get in trouble. And it was Candy Darling who said, why don't you get up and do something about it? We went upstairs, and the doors are all open. It's a long hallway, and there's all these things going on. I knew a lot of it was illegal, and I was very scared, and I yet was titillated by it. The two women went out of the room, and the ugly one, who was albino and had like pink eyes like a rat and a little tiny mouth, came up to me and said, you know those two? They're not a real woman. I'm a real woman. And I let out this scream and ran down the hall, downstairs, past Molly Martin, who was putting on her legs, in the street, out and gone. And 2 weeks later, it was Candy Darling who stopped me and said, why did you leave? I said, is it true that you're a guy? And she looked at me for a moment. She said, well, what do you think? And we became friends. It was just like that. We had similar backgrounds, both from Long Island, and we both had she had a crazy father, had a crazy stepfather, and we both loved our mothers, and we both felt we were really different than anybody else. And that was the beginning of our friendship.